Hello, I'm the Goblin from the Goblin's Grotto, and welcome to my miniature painting diary. If you're returning from either the Bones 5 reviews or my previous diary entries or something else I've yet to release, welcome back. If you're new here, welcome to the channel. Hope you like what you see and consider subscribing. Now in parts 1 and 2, I was pretty new to YouTube and tried to cram 25 miniatures each into those parts. Not only did I somehow miss 2 minis from my previous video, I also feel like I didn't really get to talk much about the minis themselves since I was trying to rush through so many. So I'm going to play a little loose with the numbers going forward, preferring to stick to time chunks as opposed to quantity of figures. Also, just a quick little update, I had been away from home, out of my state, for quite a good chunk of time, hence why I didn't upload any videos lately. Flew on a plane for the first time, that was pretty neat. And it was a pretty good experience, a great mental health break. I wasn't completely idle in that time. For one thing, I did create a Twitter account for this channel. I recommend you check it out, as that's where I'll be hosting the main bulk of my socials for this channel, and it's a nice, chill page where I share some work from others in the community, show off maybe some of my own work, and generally discuss new uploads and other things in this little realm that we've created. Definitely check that out. I'll be putting the link in the description of every video going forward. In addition to subscribing and ringing the bell on YouTube, it's going to be the best way to keep up to date with what's going on with this channel. And, as always, it does support what I'm doing here. Anyways, without further delay, let's get on with the display. The first minis I want to talk about are the ones I missed from the previous part. These are the 2 Blacksmiths from the WizKids Deep Cuts Townspeople and Accessories set. You can actually find these models from the set in a variety of other box packages, painted or unpainted. I've noticed some of those other boxes tend to come with slightly different accessories as well, so it may be worth picking up the duplicates for those, though for me, I don't really see the value in it. Speaking of accessories, I painted a few of their relevant accessories from that set here, but I generally don't count little things like that towards my grand total, unless the terrain or something is significant. Like this furnace or kiln, that might be something on this level. But I didn't really do too much special with it, I just tried to match the box art. Unfortunately, the little LED light under the coals here died. And no, it's not a battery issue. The LED, I suppose, is just very poor quality. Not much I can do about that unless I want to learn how to rewire the LED light, and I think I'm good about that for now. It also didn't have a little switch, it just had a little annoying button. Yeah, I wasn't really a fan of this. Anyways, the Blacksmiths I tried to match best to the render art on the box. Everything aside from the skin tone and the wash was all done with cheap craft paints, all apple barrel and a little folk art for the metallics. I really like the model of the male presenting Blacksmith. I can make out subtle wrinkles on his shirt that hint to larger muscles hidden underneath, as one might expect of a character in this profession. Touches like that make this guy look less generic and more defined. He also looks like he could very well defend himself, if needed. The other blacksmith looks like they're in the process of assembling a sword. That offers some great dynamic motion if you're assembling a diorama, but might look a little out of place if you're using this miniature as someone running or standing in a crowd. The wash is from the Nolzer set, which is really just an army painter wash, themed and sized down. The brown and flesh wash, in this instance, did wonders for the mini. Defined her muscles and broke up the apron and the color blocks. Yep, there was a period in time where I thought that lady was my favorite mini I've ever painted. That's changed a bit since then, but I still quite like the figure, and I'm very proud of it. The next mini that I painted was the Wight from one of the Hasbro Arena of the Planeswalkers set. The ones in the background are just different minis from those sets, which I painted previously. I tried to match the style with the Wight, which is the one up front and center, and I think I did that fairly well. This is definitely one of those board game minis where you can see where they made parts a bit too chunky, so it wouldn't have as much chance of harming a little kid. That's why we have these ridiculously thick arrows or crossbow bolts sticking out of this thing's body. It's also why the level of detail is passable, but nothing great. Also, apologies for the dust on these minis. Dust is a constant issue with anything not kept behind glass, but these specific minis seem to collect dust way more than others. I think it's due to the primer I used being a little sticky. Anyways, I tried to do a little glowing eye effect on the Wight. It looks okay, but I think I missed the eyes a bit. It's an alright figure, not my favorite sculpt, but not one I actively dislike. I will say harvesting board games for sculpts like this is a great way to start painting, likely on something you didn't care much about before. I mean, if you look at these minis together, they're, again, nothing crazy, but they're not all that bad either. I didn't know exactly when that Wight was painted, but I do know when these next minis were painted. I had a very busy day on August 13th, 2019, as I painted the next few figures start to finish all on the same day. You'll see this as a common theme in my painting. Long breaks between projects with lots of sculpts painted up at once. The first of this group is the Saproling Warrior from Reaper Minis. Nothing too crazy about this figure. I didn't really do much with it. I painted it up quick to match the treant I had previously painted, and there was a possibility that it would see use in the campaign I was running at the time. Unfortunately, that didn't end up happening, but that's okay. I was quite happy with how the moss and stone base turned out. Otherwise, it was just a brown blob, a quick little mini for me to practice and throw out there. If you've seen the last video, you'll know that I painted up Jack, a little pumpkin-headed guy from Reaper's Bonesylvanians line. Well, once I painted up old Jack, I just had to get the whole set, or at least what was available at the time. The first one I painted was Patch here. I made him vaguely inspired by the Scarecrow from the Batman animated series, and perhaps inspired by that, I decided not to give this figure any sort of wash, which preserved a nice cartoonish look. I mean, remember folks, not every mini needs a wash to be complete. Although this mini maybe could have used it if I wanted to make it more realistic looking. Again, I wanted to go for a more cartoon look. Also, this mini, though not physically on the table, got to be represented in my campaign as a fun little scarecrow named Patches, so that was neat. Next up, I painted Cal. Calcium, he's a skeleton, haha. Basically, I just painted this guy up as a shade of bone I liked, and then heavily washed him and dry brushed him. Cal here is fairly top heavy, falls over quite a lot. I don't have plans to use him on the tabletop, so that won't really cause any issues for me. Maybe just on the shelf where I keep him next to his friends. After those, I decided to shake things up and paint a couple of these Dreadmere Mercenaries. There were 3 in the set, but so far at this point I'd only painted the 2. While not a very combat-focused mini, I think this first mark is my favorite. The flesh wash just worked out really well on the face, and the ring of foam on this cup of ale, I think I got to a very nice glaze and a touch of gloss. There's nothing sculpted there, so I guess you could say it's kind of freehand, but it's really just globs of paint. I generally prefer combat minis, but I do really like this figure. They're gripping their blade and taking a drink. It seems like a pretty rowdy chap if you ask me. It does vaguely remind me of that one raccoon from the Kickstarter though. I took the nutmeg paint from that person's hair and applied it to the next figure's cloak, with just a few adjustments. If you have a set of similar figures, making differences between them is very important, but creating a shared color palette is equally as important if you want to create a cohesive group. And using colors from different minis in different places is a great way to establish that cohesion. I did really want to make this guy stand out though, as he's the most ready to rumble of the trio, and he had this nice visible undercoat, so I decided to make all that a nice dark green. I know this guy's a merc, but he also has this angry woodsman vibe, possibly because he's holding the axe the way he is, possibly because the way the wash went over his face, it left these highlights over his eyes and makes him look very scary in my opinion. Honestly, this figure could make a nice low-level player character mini as well. The next day, August 14th, I really just hunkered down and painted 5 more of these little folks. First up, we got Morty, the Grim Reaper. More or less, I painted this one like Cal, so it's nothing fancy. They're not exactly the same sculpt, but they're basically the same base model, which is fine. If you wanted to use these as the same character, you could just swap between them depending on whether the character is using their robe and scythe or, I guess, letting it all blow in the wind. This one is sandy. Now, the phone camera makes this one look a lot more yellow than it actually is, but I did use some beige and tan paints on the bandages here, to give it a sandy look. You'll have noticed by now that I'm not filling in the Bonesylvanians' eyes, instead painting them with a single color that I believe best fits the piece. This is both a stylistic choice and an I don't want to paint over a dozen eyes move. I think it preserves the cartoony look of these figures though, so I don't see myself going back and changing it. Sandy here is a fun one. I tried to make the tongue look red but like desiccated, and the skin is that sort of gray color. Otherwise, I tried to keep the namesake relevant, making this mummy look very much covered in sand. Next was Tut, whose skin I tried to make a little more green, probably loosely inspired by Tut from that old Discovery Kids show Tuttenstein. It's not a direct recreation though, as Tut from that show had an all blue headdress and a lot less finery. Still, I do think I did a pretty alright job with the face. Too bad this figure leans forward so much so you won't really see it from most angles. My time on this piece was spent mostly painting all these teeny tiny little details, and for that reason I think it was great practice. From the necklace to the ankh, I got to play with color palettes and scales that, to this point, I hadn't really dealt with yet. It was a good bit of fun, and I'm very proud of what I did. Definitely recommend picking up non-serious pieces like this to practice those techniques on, because really, if you mess up, there's no pressure. You're probably not going to use these in a game anyway, and if you are, it's a cute little cartoony game. There's room for things like that. Next is Bart, the zombie. Cute little guy, very modern looking though. I actually painted this with the zombie flesh from the Nolzur's Marvelous Pigment set, so hooray, I actually used that paint for its exact purpose. Woo! This figure was made in the wash though. It was good before, but applying that light wash and following it up with a little touch of dry brushing is really what brought it to life. Or unlife in this case. One thing about this mini that I don't know if I got wrong or not is that the shirt here is open, and I'm not sure if it's supposed to be an undershirt or just the bare skin. I painted it to be bare skin, but it very well could just be another shirt. Oh well. Lastly for the day, I painted Gil. Gil was very easy to paint. I could have done more, sure, but sometimes simple is better, or at least just gets you through the job. I just picked a nice shade of green, brown, yellow, slapped them on there, then gave a nice thick coat of Nuln oil gloss. Really sells that fresh out of the lagoon look. And I think it all turned out fine. To be honest, I was probably really tired by this point in the day. It didn't feel like making a mountain out of an anthill. So, for better or for worse, Gil is a very simple mini. The next day I did just a little bit more painting, and there's a lesson to be learned in two of these. But first, I'll start with Mel, the Mind Flayer. Another Bonesylvanian. I actually think this squid sorcerer could be used well in a serious play environment, not as a standard illithid, but to represent an illithid gnome or other such small folk turned illithid. In that context, Mel would probably be perfectly to scale and proportional. Nothing else, he definitely has the look that would fit within that environment. I repeated the same glossy technique on this one as I did Gil, but I actually had some bits of detail to fill in that the other one I just felt like didn't need it. I thought the deep blue skin would be really well complemented by blacks and purples and a red accent, so that's what I went with, deciding to make that red the same color as the eyes, and on the bits of uniform where I felt like they would probably prefer some kind of color signifier, like the gloves and the pauldrons, and on the rim of the cape. I also brought in some purple for that little crystal or orb in Mel's staff. Given that blue and red make purple, it just seemed like a nice color palette. Now here's where things went wrong. After painting Mel, I grabbed this other WizKid illithid that I had partially painted for months when I wasn't even really feeling it, and I was just gonna go through the motions. I probably hadn't eaten yet that day, and you know, I was using a very dark, uninspired palette, borrowing a bit from Mel's just because I didn't want to waste the paint, and so I slapped this thing together. You know, this is one of those examples of painting just to paint or hit a deadline, and if you do this, you're just going to end up unhappy with the end result, as I am with this mini, and you'll feel like all you've done is waste your time. In addition, I don't really care for this sculpt that much. It's fine, but it looks like this Mind Flayer is using these big claws. I just don't think that's their modus operandi. To juxtapose that figure, if you pick up a figure you do feel inspired about, like I did with this Wild West Wizard of Oz Scarecrow from Reaper Minis, then it's a lot easier to deliver a satisfying result. This is an interesting purchase for me because this figure has a gun, and I'm pretty fantasy focused in terms of a painter or player. The gun is subtle enough that you can kind of forget it's a gun if you don't look at it too much. It's hidden mostly by the giant scythe extensions added to its muzzle. When I was trying to decide on the palette for this one, I originally tried to replicate Patches, but the red just didn't look right to me. It was too much. And so I decided to switch gears and go for something closer to the blue of that Blacksmith from earlier in the video. I think that was a much better choice in the end. The red made everything look a bit too warm and dusty, which is fine in some cases, but this mini was meant to represent a darker character. So I actually painted this to represent the first big bad, my very first Dungeons & Dragons adventuring party would ever encounter, the Wickerman, a mysterious figure that was responsible for a string of disappearances around a quaint, small town in my homebrew setting. My players managed to put a stop to his activities, but ultimately left him alive to be interrogated and face judgment for his crimes. Later, he was carted off by a zealous and mysterious group of inquisitors to stand trial, but as of yet, his fate is unknown to the party. So perhaps they haven't seen the last of the Wickerman, and should they ever meet again, perhaps he won't be caught so off guard by a group of young, bright-eyed adventurers like last time. In the end, I never got to put this mini on the table in front of my players since we had moved to digital because of, oh well, you know. But I'm still extremely proud of my work here, and I look back on this and still think of this as one of the best minis I ever painted. So I think the lesson here is don't paint something just to paint it. Paint something because you want to paint it. The Scarecrow here is miles ahead of whatever I did to that poor Lithid model. It's on that note that I'm going to end the video here for today. In the next video, I'll be finishing off the Bonesylvanians along with a few more milestones in my painting journey. If you'd like to tag along, subscribe to the channel, hit the like button on the video, and comment below of which mini you think is your favorite. The support is really motivating, and it means a lot to see anyone enjoying my content. Speaking of which, I'm still working on a new Kickstarter review series, and if you haven't checked out my Reaper Bones 5 Kickstarter series, I highly recommend checking it out. Specifically, I recommend seeing the Should You Buy at the end of the series, as the pledge manager that gives you access to those minis at Kickstarter prices is closing October 31st. I know, spooky. So definitely check the series out. Most of what you saw here today were Reaper products, so you can gauge some quality off of that. But I did do an extensive breakdown of essentially everything that Kickstarter had to offer, as well as all the new stuff they've added to this new Ending Soon Pledge Manager. Alright, that's all from me today. Thank you so much for watching. Have a good one, and let's go paint some minis. See you next time.